Hello YouTube, it is Atticus and welcome to my very first review on my channel. So yeah, we are changing things up. I am trying to expand different content on the channel. And this is a little bit of a passion project for me, something I've been wanting to do for several months now. So yeah, we're going to be looking at Game of Thrones Season 8 and doing a retrospective on it. A very detailed analysis. We're going to be looking at each episode, talking about its strengths, some of its weaknesses. I'll share my thoughts on it, and yeah, we're going to just really try to take a magnifying glass to this season, which has been very decisive. A lot of people either love it or either hate it, and I kind of feel like it has a little bit of a I'd say that the weights of negativity are starting to, I feel like the people are starting to turn against it. So I've rewatched the first 5 episodes like several times, at least like 3 or 4 times. And the more I watch it, the more I kind of like it. So what I think is happening, well, we'll get into that a little bit later, what I think is happening with the season. So let's go and start with the retrospective. So yeah, Season 8 had humongous shoes to fill. I mean, never has there been a show like Game of Thrones that's ever, been on television. I always tell people that it is like the next Lord of the Rings. It is the next generation's Lord of the Rings. I mean, it is. I mean, this show will go down as one of the greats. It really was revolutionary for some of the storytelling, the character development, the whole idea of killing off main characters. It went against all the tropes of like fantasy, where your heroes would always beat evil, like good will always triumph over evil, things like that. It grayed the lines on good and bad. It just did so many things differently, and it really has been such an amazing experience. Like I originally got into the show because of Sean Bean. I'm a lifelong Lord of the Rings fan, and yeah, I mean, I saw Boromir on a new show, in a fantasy show, and I was like, yeah, I had to see this, and yeah, I've been hooked since day one. This show obviously has a huge amount of hype around it. This season has had so much hype. I mean, we've had to wait 2 years for this. I mean, and I know, like, literally, it felt like 5 years. I was literally, counting down the calendar days, waiting for Season 8, because the way Season 7 ends with the wall coming down, I mean, what better of a cliffhanger could you get? So, yeah, and one of the things that was really kind of concerning for me about this season was, though, that there was only going to be 6 episodes. 6 episodes, so you're going to wrap up a story as epic and as, so many, I guess what I'm trying to say is just, how the hell were they going to wrap this up at 6 episodes? I mean, there was just so many things you had going on. You had the Dorne plot, you had the White Walkers plot, you had the Jaime, his story plot, you had the Lannisters, the Starks. There were so many things, and in 6 episodes, yeah, you might be able to focus on one of those plots really good in detail, like it should be, or a little bit of each, but never with much depth, which is not what any of us really wanted. I mean, we really wanted to. For example, like, when you have to walk somewhere, we want it to take a couple episodes. So if you're trying to get to the wall to Winterfell, it shouldn't be in the same episode that you get there. Old school Game of Thrones would have it where, yeah, it would take a couple episodes. You'd see the people. I guess I'm getting a little bit off track though, guys. So I'll get into that. So another really awesome thing about this season, and the thing that a lot of us were excited for, guys, was the White Walkers. I mean, winter is here. That is the big selling point. That was what was in the trailers. I mean, you'd see the ice, approaching on the heroes in the tombs or the crypts. Yeah, I mean, that was, like I said earlier, I mean, the big cliffhanger of Season 7. This has definitely been a season of highs and lows. There's been some of the coolest moments I've seen in the series happen in this season. And some of the worst things I've seen happen. For example, The Long Night, Episode 3, which we're going to talk in length about that episode. It had by far some of the coolest things I've ever seen on television or movies, period. And then it also had a few things that I kind of just was like, what? This doesn't really feel Game of Thrones kind of to me, but... and like I said, 2 years in the making, but anticipation. So, yeah, I mean, we've all been sitting here anticipating this show, and I think that is kind of what the problem is. Expectations. That anticipation has kind of turned into expectations. And I think like years from down the road, people are going to look at this show, and once their expectations, what we will all wanted to happen, and kind of just fades away, and we just kind of accept what we have. You'll be able to judge it a lot more clear-headedly. And I've noticed, what did I want to happen in this show? I wanted the White Walkers to be the main threat. I was hoping that this would be a story where the White Walkers would have their first battle with the heroes, the Alliance. They would get beat. They would go to King's Landing, and then the final episode would be the final battle, with the Night King and so on. But we didn't get that. So the initial disappointment I had from watching that, once I was able to kind of just accept what we've gotten, I'm starting to enjoy it. If I could just put my expectations to the side and just judge and enjoy the show for what I'm seeing, I think it's really made me appreciate it a little bit more. It definitely does have problems, and I know there's so many videos out right now that are really critiquing the show. Some people hate it, some people are, rightfully so. It is not to the same standard in which we're accustomed to. I think the biggest problem, if you had to say into this one, with one sentence, would be that it's rushed. But I would wager that in a couple of years, people will look back on this and like it a little bit better than they're doing now. And I kind of talked about the negativity. So let's go ahead and jump into the episodes, guys. So episode 1, Winterfell. This was, God, I can remember the Sunday morning when I was, waiting for this show to happen. It was like the hours would go by so slowly. I was so excited. I was like, I really, here it was, Winterfell. Season 8 is finally here after 2 years. I used to always joke with my friend Ben that, I can't die till I see season 8. I have to stay alive long enough to see this show. And episode 1 was a pretty awesome episode. It was a pretty cool, we all knew we were going to get any Night King or any White Walkers or anything crazy the first episode, but it still scratched that itch. It still lifted you enough to get you excited. So it originally aired on April 14th. This was kind of the spoilers, the synopsis of what happened. Jon and Daenerys have a cold reception in Winterfell, which you do see when they're approaching. You saw the Northerners kind of looking at Dany, giving her the mean look. Jon meets his brothers and sisters, rides the dragons with Daenerys, and then she discloses to Sam the fate of his father and brother, which we'll talk about that scene a little bit later too. When Jon meets Sam, he discloses who his parents are. Euron Greyjoy meets Cersei to collect his recompense for joining her army. Theon rescues his sister Yara and decides to go to Winterfell. Jaime arrives in Winterfell to see Bran Stark. So a lot of things here to kind of talk about. I would definitely say that this episode sets the tone for the season, and it was a really good start. It was what I wanted. I was kind of hoping to see a little bit of the White Walkers. I wanted to see the last hearth maybe getting attacked, or maybe see the undead walking away after completely destroying it. I wanted to have that sense of dread, but the director and the writers did kind of get this with the boy at the very end. Was it the Umber boy? So we kind of got a version of that, even though it wasn't what I was kind of hoping for. This episode definitely gave me the feels. It was a episode of reunions and definitely fan service. My favorite scene, which we will get into, I think it's the next slide. It was the Jon and Arya reunion. That was so, just so moving. The Unsullied and the Dothraki. I thought that was, watching those guys come into Winterfell, it was one of those things you used to always kind of just daydream about. What would that be like? You see the Dothraki and their, sleeveless shirts, and the Unsullied, and now you see them all in weather gear or winter gear. I thought that was so cool. That's realistic. I'm glad they would, because you would think how these people are going to survive in this cold weather. But they did, and as they were marching in to Winterfell, it kind of took you back to episode 1 of season 1 when Robert was coming into Winterfell, and I like how the writers and the director had the little boy who was kind of how Arya was in the first episode when she's running to watch the army, as they approach. I thought that was really cool. You see that Arya sees the Hound, and we've all been wondering how that would go down, because the last time they saw each other, he left her to die, and she robbed him. So that was really cool. We also have the Cersei and Euron part of this episode, and who would have thought Cersei and Euron would have got would bunk up like they did? Euron is such a dirtbag, but Cersei's a dirtbag too, I guess. So it is what it is. Another really cool thing about this episode was the bronze scene when he gets the assassination mission from what's his name? Having a brain fart. But I thought it was really funny when he goes, "Oh, poor girl. The pox will take her within the years." And John Bradley, who is the actor who plays Braun, goes, "Which girl?" I thought that was really funny. And he hands him that crossbow to assassinate Jamie and Tyrion with. So a little poetic justice, and I thought that was kind of cool. But it kind of makes you wonder, does Cersei really want to kill Jamie? Because if you look at how episode 5 went down, they sure don't seem very. Yeah, she seemed pretty relieved to see him. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if I agreed that Cersei would actually want to kill Jamie, because she could have had the Mountain kill him when he left, but I don't know. I thought one of the really impactful scenes was, one of the best scenes too, was when Sam finds out about his father and his brother. That was such a hard, you could feel for him. You really could. The way that the actor really portrays it when when Dany tells her, yeah, your father, I offered to let him retain his titles and lands if he would bend the knee. And, he refused. And you see Sam, he's a little bit upset, but his father was so mean to him. So he's like, well, at least I could go home now that my brother's in charge. And then, that look that Dany gives him, you can just see his spirit just getting crushed. That was, to find out your father and your brother had been executed and the person who did it was right in front of you. That would be really hard. And his acting, really, John Bradley, who's an amazing actor. What he did with Sam throughout these last 8 seasons it's pretty cool. I buy it. I really liked his growth. I feel like you've seen this guy go from a coward, a bumbling idiot, to somebody who has the respect of people like John. And then obviously the big moment of this episode was Jon finds out that he is Aegon Targaryen, 4th of his name, I do believe it is. So we all kind of rehearsed in our head how we thought that would go down once we found out the truth about Jon. And the way he portrays it, that you can see he's so conflicted with it when he tells Sam, that's treason. I don't know, I thought that was just really cool. I really like that. The way that Jon took that news, and it kind of makes you wonder, how would you take it? If you found out that you were the heir to your whole life, you thought you were a bastard, you thought that you were unwanted, you thought that you were, just a lesser person, and then to find out that you have a claim to the throne, that you are a king, that you have nobility, that you were born of love, not just some mistake in a tavern. That would just be mind blowing. And the way Jon took the news was really, really good. Obviously we had the last hearth scene, which was, that was creepy as hell. And I remember when I was watching it, you get the view where he's standing right there in front of the little boy, and you see his eyes open up. Tormund, when he's standing right in front of him talking to Ed or whatever it is, you see the little boy's blue eyes open up, and you had to, if you didn't catch it, you wouldn't see it. And then that scream that he gives, oh man, that thing was haunting. Go back and watch that episode, guys. Listen to that scream. He's just burning to death. It was a terrifying scene to end the episode on. So each episode I'm going to be giving an epic scene award to. So I'm going to be doing 2 things. I'll talk about my favorite part of the episode, and then I'm going to give the most epic scene award. So the most epic part of this episode was when Jon rides Rhaegal. God, that was so cool. And I stand by it. I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen on TV or movies, period. It's his birthright realized, his Targaryen blood. And one of the questions I still have that I'm really hoping that we can find out this Sunday is he fireproof? He has the connection with the dragon, which is, his Targaryen blood, but does he have the fire resistance like Dany? So, And the CGI. Holy crap. I never thought I would see dragons realized this perfectly ever in my lifetime. I remember when I saw Dragonheart with Sean Connery back in the day, thought it was so cool. You had to suspend a little bit of belief, because of the CGI, but I totally buy it. And not only that, just the designs of the dragons. Whoever who was the designer for the designs of the dragon, I applaud you, sir. or ma'am. One of the coolest things that I like in a dragon is when it doesn't have 4 legs and then wings. I like its front arms and legs, its front arms to be the actual wings, kind of like how these dragons are portrayed. Like the one in Dragonheart, he had like 4, like a dog, and then wings on the back. But it makes more sense if his arms are the actual wings, because that's where your muscles would be. So, yeah, I love the design. I love that scene. I went back and watched it last night as they're just riding through the canyon. And man, that is so cool. And I just try to imagine like what that would feel like. And I try to think of the logistics of it too. Like what do you hold on to? So, they have these little bit of spikes. Yeah, so you have a little, you could brace yourself that way. But when the dragon like turns to sideways, what keeps you from just sliding off? I mean, maybe you could push your foot into one of these back spikes or something. I don't know. I was kind of just wondering. Like you thought that maybe later in the show that they would design like some kind of harness or like a seat or something, like a saddle or something. But no, they just ride them, just straight up like, which is cool. But you can't. It doesn't allow you to be able to really fight on the back of the dragon, which I kind of would have liked because I'm a Dragonlance fan. For any people who don't know, it's one of the greatest fantasy stories ever told. It's up there with like Lord of the Rings, Forgotten Realms. I would strongly recommend it if you guys haven't heard about it. It's called Dragonlance, written by Margaret Reese and Tracy Hickman. At least the original trilogy or sextology is how you say it, was by them. And then obviously there's like 1,000 other books by different authors in the series. But one of the big things about that series was dragon riders. And you'd have like these knights that could fight on the back of their dragons. And yeah, I mean, I kind of, that's what I was kind of hoping for, to see like maybe that John would have like a lance or have his sword be able to fight. But yeah, when you're holding on for dear life, that doesn't make it possible. But this is definitely the closest thing to the Dragonlance series. Is the closest thing that we'll probably ever get. Unless, hey, maybe someday that they'll take a chance on that series. And then my favorite scene was, yeah, like I mentioned before, the Jon and Arya reunion. Man, that was so good. And I definitely buy it that these two are brother and sisters. I know how like me and my brothers would be. Like, one of my favorite things about the scene was when they look at each other's swords. And you can just tell, like, yeah, look at mine. Look how cool this is. And that's exactly how brothers are, or a brother and sister, I would imagine. I don't have any sisters, but well, I have a stepsister, but they I lost my train of thought. But yeah, okay, what I was trying to say is this is the way that they were when he's like, you want to see my sword? And she's like, oh, it's too heavy or something like that. It was just amazing acting. And we've waited for this reunion for years. I mean, when's the last time that Arya and Jon saw each other? Season 1, right? Yeah, I believe it was season 1 because that's when he went to the wall. So 7 years since they saw each other. Could you imagine that, being apart from your brother, your sister, something like that long? And so yeah, this is definitely my favorite scene. Next, we come to episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and boy, oh boy, this was the one that I kind of wanted to fast forward, because I just wanted to get to the Battle of Winterfell, but after I saw this episode, I'm glad. It was a little bit of false advertising, though, too, because this episode definitely gave you the impression that this was a goodbye, a send-off to many of the characters. It really gave you this impending sense of, all right, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people dying on the next episode, which didn't happen, which we'll get into. But yeah, it was a good episode, though. Still, it still had some really cool character moments. It originally aired on April 21st, and yeah, the synopsis of it was, the spoiler of it was, Jaime is faced by his past mistakes. Tyrion's decisions are seen with doubt. The Battle of Winterfell is discussed tactically. Sansa and Daenerys discuss the future. The remaining Night's Watchers are reunited. Everyone prepares emotionally with the thoughts of their fate. And Jon tells Dany the truth. And then lastly, the White Walkers appear. So, a lot of things to talk about on this episode. It starts out, obviously, with the trial of Jaime. And boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, that was good. I really liked it. I was really impressed. Just about, you wonder how that would go. Like, and I like that it was in front of both Dany, Sansa, and Jon. I like the way that Jaime didn't apologize. He's like, you want me to apologize? I won't. We were at war. I was fighting for my family. Like, I like that. I like that he stood for his decisions. Because war is hell. And yeah, I mean, how he chose to conduct it might have been questionable on some decisions. But yeah, ultimately he was fighting for his family. And then obviously when Bran says, the things that we do for love, the look on Jamie's face. The actor's name is Nikolai, I do believe. You could just see it, just boom, shut him up like that. And what could he say? His fate was literally in that kid's hands when he said that. He knew it. He was checkmate. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool scene. Obviously, in this episode, we had one of the most I don't want to say controversial, but one of the most shocking things that happened on Game of Thrones. It wasn't a character death. It wasn't a monster of some sort. It was seeing Arya and Gendry hook up. Like I don't know, like Arya, I still see her as a kid. It was so weird. You felt kind of dirty watching that. And the actress is like 22 years old or whatever. So but still, it just you see somebody as a kid for so long, you just associate them as that. So yeah, that scene was a little weird. It was filmed. I feel like tastefully. They didn't. It wasn't exploitful, or is that the word I'm looking for? It wasn't like exploiting to the actress. Kind of just get the side view, and their little dialogue between each other was kind of okay, I guess, cute or whatever that's the word you want to use. But it definitely was a shock. That's one thing I never thought I would see in Game of Thrones. Next, another great scene that I really liked was the battle plan, and the tension that came from that battle plan. So yeah, you see they're all standing around the table, and what's the word I'm looking for? They look at the so you have like the Winterfell, you had the Dothraki, you had like the little stones representing it, and on the opposite side of the table, you had all these stones that were supposed to represent the undead, and it really kind of gave you a sense of the scale of just how big, how largely that they are outnumbered. So I really like that. The battle plan that they actually end up using in episode 3 doesn't make sense at all. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, I still like that scene. And I liked when Bran's like, he'll come for me. They talk about, okay, this is another critique that I do have, though, is I call it the episode 1 error, or the idea that there's like this impending doom, but you only have to kill one thing and it'll kill all the minions. So you had that on episode 1 when you killed the droids. You killed the mothership, then all the droids shut down. In Avengers, the verse Avengers, you blow up the mothership and all the Chitauri shut down. I feel like that's like a trope that always happens through Hollywood, and I hate it so much. So of course that's what they choose to do in this show, is you kill the Night King and all the things die. So it's just this. It comes down to just doing, getting this one lucky blow in, or killing this one thing and you win the war. And I just don't like that. I don't know. I feel like that's an easy way for the writers to get out of storytelling, and it just kind of feels cheap and it's overplayed. So that's a little bit disappointing. But Bran does say, he'll come for me. And I like how Theon's like, I'll defend him. Let me fight for you. I took this castle from you. Let me fight for you now. I thought that was really, touching. The fact that Bran gave him enough trust to fight for him, and that Jon didn't speak up, or Sansa didn't speak up and be like, hey, no, like they gave him trust. And I think Theon deserved that. He needed that, and it kind of, which will lead into his arc a little bit later. Then we also had the scene between Sansa and Dany. I have to say, guys, I am not a fan of Sansa at all. I don't like what she's becoming, because she's becoming, I understand she's trying to be cold and calculating, but at some point, like you got to show a little gratitude. Like she is so mean to Dany. And look, I say what you will about what Dany does in episode 5. There's no reason for Sansa to be treating her like how she does. She's just cold. She doesn't give her a chance at all. And, if you look at it you literally owe your life to Dany. She came down there with all her armies, her dragons. She didn't have to. Literally, she could have stayed across the sea, let the Night King come down there and just destroy Westeros, and then, I don't know. I guess that's a different argument, but that's I feel like Dany does try to extend her an olive branch. She does try to be kind to her, but yeah, Sansa is just, and you as we'll find out, that Sansa is the one that leads to all the bad things that are happening. She's the one who tells Jon's secret to Tyrion. She's the one she's trying to play the Game of Thrones, and it's just like, why? What do you have to be? You barely made it out of originally playing that game. Just be happy. You're in Winterfell. You have a powerful family. Like, why risk all that? But I'm getting off track here. But anyway, that scene, Dany puts her hand on Sansa, and Sansa's like, well, what about the North? And I don't know, I guess it was cool within the context of the scene, but yeah, just the actions of Sansa, the actress, don't get me wrong, she's actually playing Jean Grey in the upcoming Apocalypse movie, not Apocalypse, but Dark Phoenix. I mean, I like her, don't get me wrong, but just, I don't know, I'm not feeling Sansa this season. I don't like her writing, and she has a lot of blood in her hands. And then, obviously, another noteworthy thing of episode 2, guys, was when Jon tells Dany the truth. Oh boy, oh boy. Could you imagine that conversation? Like, how would you break that to, this girl that you've been hooking up with, right? You love her or whatever, and then, hey, oh, by the way, like, the very thing that drives you, the very thing that is, like, the reason you get up in the morning, and pretty much the thing that you see as your destiny, something that you sacrificed everything for. Well, technically, it goes to me. Sorry, like, oh, man, could you just imagine the conflict? How would you even go about saying that to somebody? Now, the way that the writers chose to do it, I did like when he's looking at the statue of Lyanna Stark, or his mother, and the way that he kind of transitions into saying, like, no, she wasn't raped by Rhaegal. They loved each other, and I thought that was well done. I really bought it, the way that Dany took the news. Like, you could tell she was just appalled by it. She was shocked, it's one of those things, like, I can't really picture in my mind how you would have done that scene differently. I really think that it was done perfectly. Like, there's been a lot of mistakes this season with cutting away. For example, when Jon tells Arya and Sansa and Bran who he is, it cuts away. Or when there's some other examples of this season that's been happening where whenever, like, an important dialogue's getting ready. Oh, excuse me. It's when Tyrion finds out that Jon is the king. It would cut away. But it didn't do it on this scene, which I appreciated and I really liked. And yeah, I think it was well done. And obviously, it's interrupted in a natural way, a good way, because the horns go off. And if you guys will remember, the horns are what the Night Watch uses to warn people of, either wildlings or a ranger coming back, or, of course, the White Walkers. So it is one horn, I believe, for a rider coming back, 2 for wildlings, and 3 means the undead. So, and you finally hear it. And then the 3 horns. So, man, that gets your heart beating up. And then the score starts, that scary kind of song that comes on when the White Walkers. And yeah, they all come rushing up into the battalion, the battlements, or excuse me, that's the word I'm looking for. Such a cool scene. Another thing that I really liked, too, guys, and one of the most touching scenes was the Sansa, I spelled her name wrong, and Theon reunion. Man, that was so good. Like, Sansa has been this cold-hearted, robot pretty much the whole last 2 episodes or whatever. Well, I guess this is episode 2, but you know what I mean. And then it just melts. She sees Theon, and it just all that just... She's just human again. She runs up there and just gives him that hug. Like, I like that. That shows you, like, all right, like, Sansa does have a heart. She's not like this cold. She hasn't lost her humanity. And I don't know. I really like Theon. What he did was so, it's almost unforgivable, almost. But, the journey, him and Jaime have had such a great arc. I wish we had more time to kind of explore with Theon. Since this season only had 6 episodes, it does kind of feel a little bit rushed, but still, I've really liked it. So yeah, I did like that reunion. Then we had the Bran and Jaime scene when they're out there by the tree. Yeah, I really like that. He goes, hey, I never told you I'm sorry. And Bran's like, if you wouldn't have done that, you wouldn't have been able to change or whatever. Like, Jaime tells him, I'm not that man anymore. And I like that scene. I like that dialogue. I don't remember it verbatim what he says, but that was a really cool scene. Especially with the way that episode 1 ends with Jaime seeing Bran. And I think that was like the last scene. It was cool. I'm glad those two got a moment to kind of talk to each other. Because, yeah, Jaime did... he paralyzed a kid for life, but, Bran sees past that. He's like, hey, look, everything you did kind of led me to becoming who I was. Like, if you wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have became the Three-Eyed Raven. So, really cool scene. The Epic Scene Award for this episode, obviously, it was the White Walkers arriving at Winterfell. Oh, boy. Oh boy, my heart was do 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 do, and I was like, please don't end the episode. Please don't end the episode. And sure enough, it does. But this was the cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, this was the longest week of my life waiting for episode 3 to come out. I remember I was sitting with my friend Ben. We would make it a we would call it a, not a routine, but a we made it an event every Sunday. We'd watch this. We'd be sure we'd get together to watch it. And I looked at him like, man, I'm not going to survive a week. And I remember, literally after seeing this episode, first thing I do is get on YouTube, and I'm watching, analysis, reviews. I'm watching, people's other thoughts. You wanted to get that one little, what's the word, crumb of something more Game of Thrones. You want to get some insight of something you maybe missed. It was the most excited I've ever been for a long time. I was actually more excited for the Battle of the Bastards. I was actually more excited for the Battle of Winterfell than I was for Avengers Endgame. I was more excited for Game of Thrones than I was Avengers. And because you guys remember, the opening weekend of Avengers was the same weekend that the Battle of Winterfell took place. So that was such an amazing weekend. So Friday night, you get your ticket, you see Avengers, and then Sunday night at 9, you get to see the culmination of everything in 8 seasons. One of the coolest fantasy battles ever. So, yeah, definitely one of the longest weeks of my life. And, yeah, this was 8 years in the making for this moment. So this was definitely gets the Epic Scene Award, my Epic Seal of Approval. Ching, you know what I mean? So my favorite scene goes to... And this was the highlight of the episode when Brianna Tarf gets knighted. Man, that was a good scene. I think it's one of the best scenes in the whole show. I mean, I think an argument could be made for it being one of the best top 10 scenes ever of any Game of Thrones episode, period. I mean, that smile right there when Brianna does it, tell me that didn't, impact you guys. Tell me that didn't, just kind of pull at your heartstrings. And tell me that there hasn't been a character who hasn't deserved it more than Brianna. She deserved it, and this was her moment. And it really gave you that feeling that she was going to die next episode. That whole episode, the whole episode gave you the feeling that you were saying goodbye to, these friends. You thought that Tormund was going to die. You would think Jaime was going to die. You think Brianna was going to die. But, obviously it didn't happen, but it definitely kind of gave you that feeling, which, like I said, it was very heartfelt and bittersweet, especially with the threat of what's coming. So you see that she gets this moment she's wanted her whole life, but you know that, in any moment the White Walkers could come and just take it away. So it kind of makes it feel like, well, not only is it going to make her a better fighter, she just got her lifelong dream, even if it was only going to be for one night. And I don't know, I find that was very touching. And the whole scene, when he does knight her, it was definitely this calm before the storm. All of them standing together, sitting around a fire, kind of just joking, and the brotherhood. Yeah, it was just great. I loved that scene. And then I've always been a fan of the Jaime and Brianna relationship. Now, I didn't necessarily want it to be something where you had to have, they had to have sex. I thought it was a deeper kind of thing. I was they cared for each other. They had a friendship, maybe some love. I mean, I could have been down with that direction, but the fact that Jaime hooks up with her and then leaves her just to be with Cersei kind of ruins it. I thought that there was an understanding between knights. They cared for each other. She was the only one who saw him for what he was, the better version of himself. She was the one who reminded him, yeah, you do have honor. She was the one who kind of brought out the best in him. And I don't know. I love their the dynamic between the two. I love how these two characters would play off of each other, and it just really sucks. This is one of the big problems I do have with the season was the way that Jaime and her's goodbye, that whole idea. He sleeps with her just to leave, and we'll get into that when we get into episode 5. But and I have heard some pretty cool theories about Jaime has a drug addiction to Cersei, and that's why he went back. But I don't know. I feel like you paid it. You paved the road. You set up such an amazing relationship between these two, and it wasn't a relationship just for them to have sex. That's not what people wanted. It was something deeper in that, and we kind of got robbed of it. But, if there's one thing I've learned in life is, you get robbed. Love never goes the way you want. You're always going to get robbed of of people, or just it loves a bitch, and it never goes the way you want, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So I guess maybe it's realistic in that way, but. And then obviously, Gwendolyn Christie, her acting in that scene, this smile. I mean, look, I had to search for this picture right here. Man, you would swear like it happened to her in real life. Such amazing acting. She's an amazing actress, and that scene will go down as one of the best ever. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to episode 3. Whew. Oh boy, we have a lot to talk about here. Episode 3. The Long Night. So yeah, this originally aired April 28th of 2019, and the Night King and his armies have arrived at Winterfell, and the great battle begins. Boy, oh boy, was this a roller coaster. This was my favorite episode of Game of Thrones ever. Okay, well, let me rephrase. This and Hardhome were my 2 favorite episodes. Like this... The more I watch it, the more I appreciate it. I loved every single thing about it till the end. And now we'll get into that, but this had jaw-dropping visuals. Like the production value of this show is just unreal. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is a television show, but this was like Lord of the Rings-esque. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing the amount of detail, the amount of effort, the amount of just logistics of trying to do what they did in this show. Have an undead massive battle. It was just, I don't know. I was so happy. I remember the whole time, just at the edge of my seat, literally just, you couldn't, turn your head. It was so epic and cool to watch. Man, was there tension in this episode. So much tension. I think the opening 15 minutes of this episode, masterpiece. 10 out of 12 out of 10. The whole, the Dothraki are lined up, the Unsullied, the Dothraki charge, when they go out there and then you start seeing all the lights kind of flicker off. Man, that was such a awesome way of showing, like, you're fucked. Pardon my language, you're screwed. Sorry, if there's any kids watching. But yeah, I thought that was, I applaud the director for that moment. Miguel Spochnik, I think that's his name. It was a night that was long and full of terrors. It was the longest episode ever, I do believe, in Game of Thrones history. So, I mean, it was the same length as a movie, guys. So you pretty much saw a movie on a TV, which was cool. I know that doesn't sound the way I'm trying to say it, but... and it was definitely the Helm's Deep of television. What I mean by that is, think about it, a nighttime battle, you're defending against an army, and yeah, I mean, just like in Helm's Deep, this was the version of it. And one of my favorite scenes of this, I mean, there's so many favorite scenes. You'll see which one wins the epic award and which one wins my favorite award here in a couple slides. But the way that the Dothraki are all lined up, and you see this wave of undead just come at them, and that was such a cool way of showing the undead. It wasn't just a bunch of people lined up; it was like this ocean wave of whites. Holy crap, could you imagine that? Like, I watched that, I've rewatched it probably 20 times, and you see you get a quick glance at one of the Unsullied, and you see him through his, you see the panic he has as he's sitting there, he's braced for the charge, he sees them starting to come, and you see it, it's just like, can you imagine the courage that it takes to be able to hold the line like that? And just to have that wave just smack upon you, I mean, and you see it. Like, they even go to the whites end up going on top of the Unsullied because of their formation and everything. But that was so cool. I mean, it was literally an ocean of undead. That's like I said, the first 15 minutes were just amazing. And then, the Dothraki, when they're like charging ahead, and when the giant comes, and I wish they would have gave us maybe like a split more second of seeing the giant, because if you didn't really catch it, you wouldn't have known what happened. Like, you had to really kind of see the giant's like hand, and as he looks up, I wish we kind of maybe seen the giant, like, like the full version of him as he like, takes his hand down to smash him or something like that. It's a few more seconds to kind of be able to appreciate that scene. As I mentioned before, this did have breathtaking production value. Like, if you guys watch the after, when you get done with an episode, there's like the making of it. I think on YouTube, there's like a 45-minute video, and they talk about how they made this scene or this episode. And I mean, there were so many cool things from that. Like, they would make these discs of like burnt dead bodies. And that's what, because when you're seeing the episode, you see all these bodies littered about, and what it was just like these discs, and they would paint them, and you could pick it up, and you could set like 3 or 4 corpses down, and then you'd have like a live actor lay on top of that. Little things like that were just so cool. How they did the trench, I mean, that was actual practical effects. They had like huge propane tanks, and they had to use like metal wood, because you can't use wood because you only get one take. So they had to design a way to be able to do that. The fact that the actors and the production team and everybody was really working at night, they were really working in the elements. So cool. Another thing worth noting was the score by Raman Djawadi. I think that's how you say his name. Great. I mean, the score when the Night King is walking slowly to Bran. I love that score. I really wish they'd release like a soundtrack for this season, because there's been so many cool songs. I mean, let me rephrase. I wish that they would release a soundtrack for the series. When Sunday comes and when the season is completed, release us a soundtrack, and I would buy it, because there's been so many cool. I mean, the Cersei theme when she blows up the sept. The Night King song, the one that he did when he was walking up on Bran. There's so many cool things. They did say in that, the making of episode scene thing that they was the first time they ever like used like slow motion, or they ever did something a little bit different, was when the Night King was walking up to Bran. I guess they kind of made it a little bit hyper stylized or whatever, which I thought it worked. I thought it was pretty cool. We also obviously lost a lot of people this episode, but not as many people as I would have liked. But we did lose some of our heroes, some of our friends. So in this episode, we lost pretty much the whole Mormont family gets wiped out. So yeah, Jorah and Lady Mormont, the little bear, ripped, and they're killed. My thoughts on that is, I mean, Lady Mormont was definitely fan service the way she went, because in real life, the giant would have just stepped on her. I mean, why did he pick her up? I mean, but maybe there was like a faint. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe there's like a small part of your former self, and you become a white. Maybe like deep down, and maybe it's like the instinct of a giant would pick something up to eat it. I don't know. I'm trying to justify it. But. That's what he was trying to do. He was going to pick her up and eat her. People were wondering, like, why was he pulling her so close to his eyes? So he was getting ready to bite her head off or whatever. But yeah, it was definitely cool. I mean, who didn't like the little bear? Even though it kind of goes against Game of Thrones, like the whole idea of like there's no heroes. It's super realistic. Like, you know what? That you got to be careful though, because when we expect that doesn't mean that cool things can't happen. Because cool little small moments like that are things that become legend. I mean, yeah, you might have a 1 in a million chance something like that would happen in real life, but there's something like that would happen. Some awesome feat by some hero, or something that you think like, what's the chances? But I guess that's what you could go for. Like, you can't be so opposed of it, because it's like, well, that's not realistic. Well, every once in a while, some crazy things do happen, even in real battles. So. Jorah, you definitely got the feels. I mean, Captain Friendzone, as people like to call him. He died of honor. I salute him. So he fought, even being stabbed. Dolores said he didn't get much of he didn't have a glorious death. I did like his death actually, because it was the most realistic one. Like, that's what I kind of expected would happen to. Especially, I mean, look at this picture. You have all your main heroes pretty much up in the front, and you saw it. It was a wave of undead that just crashed upon them. So, yeah, you would expect pretty much all of them to kind of get the Dolores Ed treatment. But he does save Sam, I guess. So he did die saving one of his friends, which I do respect. But, yeah. We also lost Theon with his glorious last charge. And I think, it was an epic send-off to a character. He gets told by Bran, you're a good man and thank you. And he hears that and he accepts his fate. And he decides to look death in the eyes and go out fighting, which I respect. And I think that every man hopes, inside himself that would face when death comes to us one day, that we'll have the courage to not only maybe try to fight it, but, look it head on. And that's what Theon does. And that's like, it's a thing in the military too. Like, you always, guys, you always wonder, like, you always ask yourself, like, if the time ever comes where our lives are going to be put in danger, like, you hope that you have the courage to face it, especially, like, I was a corpsman in the Navy, which is a medic, and when I was in Corps school, they would tell us, like, we were training us, to go with the Marines and stuff, and it's a one thing to, what am I trying to say here is you think you know what you'll do, but you don't really know until you're put in that situation. So all you can do is just hope, and you hope that deep down that you have the courage to face something like what Theon did. And I love that scene. Despite all the cowardly things that Theon's done, like for example when he jumped off the ship when he was faced by Euron and stuff. Like no, he charged the embodiment of death. Pretty much the Grim Reaper, and he did it to protect his brother. And I don't know. What better way is there to die? There's a thing called a beautiful death. The Romans, I think it's originated from Romans. I actually have a ink of it, but it means to make your death be meaningful. To die saving a brother, a friend, to die protecting a fellow sailor or a marine, or to die you're protecting a loved one or something like that. And Theon got that. And I hope, I don't want to die laying in my bed, an old man. I want to die something that's going to be remembered, and Theon definitely got that. We also lost Beric. He got his Passion of the Christ moment. That's when he was in the hallway, holding the whites in place as he was getting stabbed in the back. That was cool. I mean, kind of, you wonder, people were complaining, like, all right, how's it he's able to take so many knives in the back? Well, my theory is, like, the guy's been killed how many times now? He's been brought back to life. Like, he probably has a pretty high pain tolerance. You remember when the Hound chopped him in half, pretty much? Like, yeah, I'd imagine that you just because you get brought back to life doesn't mean you don't remember the experience. So I just always thought that he had a pretty big pain tolerance since he's been brought back to life that many times. But we lost him. He did die saving Arya when he threw his sword. So I guess the prophecy about him having a role, like why the Lord of the Light was bringing him back, well, that makes sense now. Now we know. And then, we lost Melisandre, but we didn't lose her because of the undead. She kind of sacrificed herself, I guess, or the Lord of Light took her back. I'm not too sure, but she has some really cool scenes. The scene when she goes to the Dothraki and puts her hand up on their swords and lights them all. So cool. I mean, who wasn't, cheering when they saw that? And it was a really clever way of storytelling, too, because, when you did that, it gave the audience and the characters a sense of hope. Just, have it just distinguished, taken away from us a few minutes later when they go charging. But yes, Melisandre had some of the coolest scenes when she lights the fence, and and you see like the Dothraki holding the line. And then obviously, I think we should mention the Dothraki in this episode. They got totally destroyed. Now there was some huge battle plans and tactical errors in this episode. For example, putting your artillery in front of your infantry is pretty stupid. Sending your Dothraki charging ahead without even knowing what you're fighting, without knowing what the numbers, the position of your enemy, without any support. But I tried to find ways to justify it. One was that, maybe they were a little bit overconfident. The Dothraki are known to be undefeatable. If they have an open plain to charge on, people always say within the show they can't be beat. Maybe when their swords got lit, maybe they give them a false sense of bravado. I don't know, but I do think that would have been smarter. What they should have done had the Dothraki on each side of Winterfell. Send your trench, have several different kind of trenches, build more than just one. Have your Unsullied behind those trenches, maybe have 3 trenches, alright? So you have Winterfell, you have a ring of 3 trenches, and behind each one there's 3 different, formations of the Unsullied. So the Unsullied are fighting behind the trench, which is going to be a lot easier because the trenches are going to stop the initial first charge. You could light it, and then as the zombies try to lay down, well, the Unsullied could fight. I think that would have made a lot more sense. And then your Dothraki would have been on each side and been able to do a pincer maneuver, or been able to flank the actual undead. So that was a pretty big oversight. Is that what we're looking for? Pretty big error to be done by some of the greatest tactical minds in Westeros. Jon Snow should definitely have known better. I'm trying to make excuses for the show why the Dothrakis charged ahead like that. Another thing that you could have done differently, if you're going to be waging war at night, is why not have fires set out at the perimeter? As night approaches, have huge fires so you could start seeing, when the undead start approaching. Even if they put the fire out, at least you had time to see it. You could get maybe a feel for their numbers, their positioning, etc. And then also, why not send Danny or John ahead before the dragons to do a fire run, and you could kind of see okay, that's where they're at, or now we know there's giants, so we shouldn't charge. I mean, it just didn't make sense. I know it was probably done for storytelling, but that was a pretty big error. The Unsullied are the true unsung heroes of this episode. Like I mentioned before, the courage those guys had to sit there and hold the line. I don't understand why they were fighting behind catapults and in front of their barrier. I know they were buying time for the other ones to retreat, but just like I said originally, put them behind the barrier and they're going to be able to fight a whole lot longer. But yeah, the courage of those guys, especially when they're, they realize, okay, we're meant to hold the line so everybody else can retreat. Like we're on a suicidal mission here, but they did it anyway. And to be able to look death head on like that, I mean, that kind of courage those guys had, so cool. I definitely respect it. The Unsullied, one of the best fighting forces I've ever seen in a show. They definitely put the Golden Company to shame. But yeah, I definitely think that they deserved a shout out. The dragons and the truly amazing CGI. I know I've been praising the CGI of the season, pretty much this whole series, because it's groundbreaking. The scene when the dragons go up into the sky, when the Night King and Daenerys are having their fight on their dragons, when Viserion is fighting Jon Snow, when he's trying to keep him from getting into the gardens or whatever. Wow, that CGI is just great. And then obviously the Night King scenes. There's a lot of good ones, guys. There was the whole "come at me, bro" moment. So I think we were hoping that Jon Snow and the Night King would face off. I know I was. I mean, ever since Hard Home, the way he looks at Jon, kind of like, yeah, I'm coming for you. Like, you can't stop death. Run now, but I'm going to find you. So cool. One of my biggest disappointments was that they recasted the actor for the Night King. I used to love the look of, like in season 4, the Hard Home version of the Night King. I used to love the way he looked. He was a lot skinnier. He had like his arms exposed. He had like this more like kind of just demoness kind of look to him. The new actor, I don't know. He looked a little bit more human. He wasn't as jagged. I don't know. He was not as slim. I just like the look of how the Night King used to look, and they changed it up. But this season, I think they kind of made him even look better than he did the other season. Like his horns are a little bit wider. But yeah, his scenes are epic. I thought it was really cool the way that they directed it when Bran goes into the Ravens, and you see that cool view of he's like on the dragon, and he puts his hand out to tell the whites to land on the fire. That was really neat. I thought that looks like something out of a comic book almost. And then obviously when Danny tries to burn him alive, that was an epic scene. And wow, what did you guys think about the Night King actually smiling? Now, initially I was upset by that. I'm like, come on, man, that's kind of cheesy. But if you think about it, the Night King has smiled before. So it kind of fits the character. And I had to kind of think about it. Like, remember when he grabs the little baby? I don't remember what season it was, but when he turns it into the White Walker, well, when he picks it up, he smiles at the little baby. So he is capable of smiling. He does have a personality. So once I remembered that, I was okay with it. But that scene was so cool. She's like, Dracarys, and boom. And yeah, he doesn't die. Even though Valyrian steel is made from dragonfire, I do believe. So if it can make the blade, why can't it just kill him straight out? But I don't know. You've seen throughout the series, like whenever he walks on fire, it kind of goes out. So maybe it's a spell or something like that. I'm willing to give him that. We didn't get a Night King versus Jon Snow fight scene though, and yeah, subverting our expectations is the big line. I feel like since The Last Jedi, we always keep hearing, but yeah, that was a little bit disappointing for me. I definitely wanted to see what the Night King could do. I wanted to see, how great of a fighter he was. I wanted to see, I don't know, I just wanted to see something. He was always just walking towards things or raising the dead. That was a really big missed opportunity, I do believe. If you wanted to go with the Arya route, which they ended up going, you could have still done that, but you could still had a fight scene. You could have given the Night King a little bit more development. This was, he was the big bad. I don't care what anybody says. Like, the Night King was the big bad. The White Walkers were the point of the show. The show decided not to go that route, and it is what it is. Like I said, I'm accepting what we got. I'm putting my expectations aside, and I'm judging it for what we got. But yeah, the White Walkers were supposed to be the big bads. So yeah, if you're gonna kill them, give us a little bit more of them. I don't know. I just feel like we kind of got robbed in that moment. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later too. And then obviously the Arya and the Splinter Cell scene. That's why, if any of you guys play that game Splinter Cell, when you have to like sneak around, you have like your 3 night vision goggles, and you're coming down, and you have to like hide behind walls, and yeah, that's what Arya was doing when she was in the library, or I think that's what it was, the library, and she's trying to dodge the undead. I thought that was really cool. I mean, it's a clever way for the filmmaker, the director, to cut away from the battle so you don't get desensitized from it, because if all you have is just constant fighting, you'll get bored by it. And a good example of watch the movie Alexander with Colin Farrell. He has these fight scenes that just go on and on and on, and it gets to the point where you just don't care. So you definitely want things in what's the word I'm looking for, in moderation. And I thought it was kind of cool as a way for us to kind of cut away from there, to kind of show a different, it went from like an action to like a horror movie thing. So, I don't know, I thought it was kind of clever. And the way that she like turns the corner and the White's there, and before it could scream, she sticks the dagger through its throat. Really cool. I mean, it makes you wonder, though, what if that had been like, Jon Snow or the Mountain coming to check on her. He comes around the corner like, "Hey, Arya," and just gets killed. Like, that would suck, but maybe her reflexes are that good. And then, yeah, we had the Jon Snow and the Night King showdown. So, it wasn't the showdown we wanted, guys. It wasn't the sword fight, like I was saying, but we did get the reference to Hardhome when he does raise the dead. And that was cool. I mean, look at the way he looks. I like how he puts his hands and just slowly starts to raise them, and his head's kind of like lurched forward. It's so freaking menacing looking. And Jon sees it. He's like looking around and seeing all these bodies coming alive, and he's like trying to rush there in time. But yeah, that was cool. But it kind of makes you wonder, like, come on, Night King, are you scared of Jon? Or do you just not have any respect for him at all, and you're just like, all right, let's let my underlings do it. And because of this, it led to the crypts. And I have to ask, who didn't see this coming? The characters or the fans? Like, we all knew they were going to go this route. If a show that's so concerned on trying to subvert expectations and trying to be unpredictable, well, you kind of did the most predictable thing. Though they didn't really focus that much on it. It wasn't really that much impactful because no one really died in the crypts that we cared about. So, I mean, it could have been a really missed opportunity. If you're going to go that route, well, make it have a cost. Maybe we should have lost Tyrion, or maybe we should have lost one of the main characters, Missandei, or whatever her name is, Missandei. But yeah, I guess it was cool from like a visual kind of element, but I just feel like both the fans and the people, the characters, could have seen that coming. We already talked about the Dracarys, the Night King, when he's like, psych, when he didn't get burned alive. And then, yeah, we come to the Jon, the Dragon, and the Rock. Now, I know what I was thinking after watching that scene, or actually after watching episode 5 a couple nights ago. It's when Drogon's like blowing up castles with his dragon breath. Like, you see one moment when he flies by the Red Keep, and he blows his fire and literally just cuts through the castle and just makes it collapse. So it's showing that dragon breath is strong enough. And we also saw the undead dragon, Viserion, I think his name is, break the wall at the end of season 7. So we know how powerful dragon breath is. But Jon is able to hide behind a rock and not get burnt. Now, they could redeem themselves by showing that, okay, well, Jon has Targaryen blood, so it wouldn't have mattered. So if that's the route they go, I'll excuse it. But if not, if Jon can get hurt by fire, well, then he should be dead. And I felt that was such a, I don't know, there's no consistency with you show one thing, for example, like the Scorpions, Qyburn's, that's his name, Qyburn's Scorpions. In one episode, those things are super accurate, they kill 3 dragons, and then another episode, they can't hit a single thing. Like, I want it to be consistent. If you're gonna show one thing in one episode, stick to it on the other. So I will reserve judgment with the Dragon and the Rock till the last episode this Sunday. If Jon can withstand fire, then I'll let it have a pass. Another noteworthy thing was the Bran and the Night King staring contest. one of the coolest things about that, it's not a staring contest, but you know what I mean. One of the cool things about that, which if you guys go back and rewatch, was that Bran actually looks at the Night King. He stares at him, and he looks down at his chest, and then looks right back up. So, excuse me, my hair got in my mouth. What that does for me, or what I thought, is like he was seeing, he knew the future. He was looking like, all right, this is going to be the spot which Arya kills you at. And you can see the Night King kind of realizes it. Like he notices it. Like as soon as Bran looks down at his chest and look back up, the Night King kind of cocks his head to the side, and then that's when he reaches for his sword. But I thought that was kind of cool. Now, there is a really cool theory that was, it's not mine. I've heard it, I forget who I heard it from, but it was this idea of, it's kind of the route I wish they would have taken with the Night King. It was the whole theory that the Night King was Bran, and how it was proposed, like how this guy, I forget what channel it was, but how he explained it was that, you know how Bran could go back into the past and can change things. That's how he made Hodor and stuff like that. Well, he said, like, why not have Bran before this moment? You know, when he says, "I'm going to go now," he wargs back into the moment where the kids of the forest, the first, or whatever they're called, the little elven kids, are getting ready to make the Night King. And then Bran actually turns into the guy who's tied up to that rock. And he warns the kids. He's like, hey, look, don't do this. You don't know the damage and the death that you will unleash on this world if you create this monster. And the kids of the forest say, hey, there's nothing worse than man. And they end up doing it anyways. But Bran, remember he was warned, if you stay too long into the past, you'll get stuck there. And he finds that it took too much of his power to go back into that moment, to work into the mind of that guy, that he gets stuck into the body of the Night King, and he is the one who gets turned into the Night King. So that creates the connection between why is the Night King always trying to kill, Bran, or why he's trying to find him, because it is him. Like it creates like the cycle, and I thought that would have been really cool. I wish they'd have went kind of that route, but they didn't, because we have no explanation for why the White Walkers do what they do, why the Night King wanted the Three-Eyed Raven. I just thought that was a cool fan theory that I wish really would have paid off. And then obviously, guys, we had the finale, the Night King's death, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like it, and even after rewatching it, I just don't like it. I can't find anything that really justifies it in my mind. I could think of ways that you could have done it better. For example, like, all right, have the same thing happen, right? The Night King is staring at Bran, and you're looking, right? You see all these bodies behind him, and you notice one of the whites kind of breaks formation and starts walking ahead. And as the audience, as a viewer, you're thinking, all right, maybe the Night King is sending this white ahead to kill Bran or something like that. But instead, it's Arya. And she, takes off the mask, and then she does that dive for the Night King. But that's how she's able to rush ahead. That would have made a lot more sense. Or that would, but the way we had it, with her just teleporting out of nowhere, and it's just not earned. And I don't like the fact that it was Arya who killed him in the first place. Like, I know subverting expectations, but she had nothing to do with the White Walker story. That was Jon's story. Like, she should have killed Cersei. And I know this is my expectations coming, but I'm just trying to say that the way they chose to do it just didn't give much of a payoff. It didn't give us any emotional payoff. It was very kind of underwhelming. It was shocking they did it just to be shocking because they didn't think anybody would ever think of it. And I don't know, it was very unfulfilling for me as a viewer. Somebody who loved the Night King, loved the White Walkers, to see that he gets taken out so easily by somebody who didn't have anything to do with him. I don't know. It was very disappointing, and it almost ruined the show for me. I remember when I first saw it, like, I was angry. I was mad. I couldn't believe, like, for one, that they were ending the White Walker threat in one battle. I mean, how anticlimactic is that? And for two, that Arya gets the kill. But I've had a couple weeks now to digest it, and I'm just like, judge it for what we got. Just accept it. Put your expectations to the side. And yeah, I'm not going to try to defend it because I do think that was a big mistake. I did not agree with it at all. Arya should not have gotten a kill. Maybe you could have done it where Arya and Jon worked together, but Jon should have had something to do with that. Or I don't, or at the very least have it make sense how Arya was able to sneak up behind him, like something. It's just anything besides what we got, and I don't know. Like, I feel like this decision really hurt the fan base, or kind of destroyed the fan base. Like, it kind of started the civil war that we're seeing now, with people either hating the show or loving it, because we kind of got robbed out of the White Walker story that we wanted. But I'm going to reserve judgment because we don't know how the show ends yet. So, putting that aside, I'm accepting it. I'm judging for what we got, and I think that was probably the big thing that kind of was a missed opportunity. So the Epic Scene Award for this episode, guys, goes to the Dragons in the Moonlight. So yeah, I mean, who didn't like that scene? It made me think of the whole Batman scene when he like flies up to the moon, and the first Tim Burton Batman, and then he goes back down. Yeah, that was so cool. That's like something out of a dream. I don't know how to describe it. It just really resonated with me. So definitely gets the Epic Scene Award, the Epic Thumbprint, or whatever you want to call it. It's arguably the most cinematic shot in the whole series. Yep. So, and my favorite scene, can you guys guess? Take a few seconds here. Was Melisandre lights the trench. So I bet you guys didn't see that one coming. Maybe you might have, but yeah, I thought this scene was freaking epic. So cool. And it's because first off, let me say it's like the same moment like in the Battle of Helm's Deep when Gandalf comes up on the ridge with the Riders of Rohan, and they start to charge down. And it's like, the music starts swelling, and Gandalf's like, ah! It was like that. It was like that kind of like badassery to me. Because when you see Melisandre, you see through her POV as she's like lighting the trench. You see the Unsullied in front of her, and you see like they're just falling. They're holding the line, but the line is just breaking. It's getting closer to her, and she's like chanting. You can see like the doubt in her face. She like looks over, the music's all swelling. She looks back, there's only like 2 Unsullied formations left. And then, the last one falls and the skeleton's running right at her. She like says the last chant, and then boom, and you see the fire like reflect in her eye like that, and it just blows that skeleton up. That was epic. Man, that was so cool. I mean, not only from just like nail-biting anticipation, but I mean, it just it gave us a moment of hope because it created the barrier, but it also was just filmed spectacularly. Like that was, I mean, bravo. That was my favorite scene of the show or of the episode, and yeah. Whenever I go back and watch the episode, I always like to start out with. I always fast forward to that scene just to watch it like twice. It's just so cool. So yeah, guys, we made it for the first 3 episodes. So this is the end of part 1. Obviously, I can't do the second part yet because Sunday is not here yet. So I'm going to start working on episode 4, 5, and then Sunday on 6. So give me about a week and a half, and I'll have part 2 up. So this is my very first analysis, retrospective on anything before. So if it was a little bit sloppy, if it was a little bit kind of, maybe not as good as what maybe you might see from like Oliver Harper or any of those other really like great pros at doing it, keep in mind it's my first attempt, guys, and I will get better. I'm gonna work on trying to bring you guys, this is kind of the direction I want to go with my channel, things like this and some other things as well. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I hope that it was I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too bad. And yeah, so I will see you guys at the part 2, episodes 4, 5, and 6 here in a week or so. And I hope you enjoyed this. This is Atticus, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye now.